Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. I hope you're all doing okay today and that you're ready for some more of The House in Fata Morgana. So last time we did start with the short stories, and that's what we are continuing today. We managed to get through 3 of them last time, so we'll see how many we will get through today. I hope that maybe we can get in more than 3 this time, but we will see. It depends really on how long they are and such. Because it does take quite some time to read through everything out loud, so even if the stories themselves aren't that very long, it takes a lot longer than if I would have read them on my own, so we will see. But I have enjoyed those that we have read so far. At least they have been very good. So I just hope that the rest of them will continue to be good. I mean, I'm guessing that they will be, because so far this game has not let me down. Hi Day, welcome. How many do we have left? Let me check. So we read 3, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 in total do we have. So I'm guessing at least 2 more streams, including this one, but we will see. But as I have said before, I am enjoying myself immensely, so even if it takes longer, doesn't matter, because I'm having fun and I hope you guys do have fun as well. So yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I don't really want to say goodbye to this game. I mean, I am looking forward to the game we are playing after The House in Fata Morgana. I'm looking forward to it a lot. But this has been such a long and wonderful journey, and it is very bittersweet to see it end. But I do think that ending it with the short stories, I mean, we are taking it in the order that the menu is in, the short stories are last. But I do like it this way, because even though it felt very good and would have felt good to end it with reincarnation, I do like that we kind of loop back to where we started, with the main game and the gloominess and the just sadness of it all. So yeah, I think this is a good way to end our journey, with just these short stories, really. So yeah, I don't have that much else to say. I think we should jump into the game before my voice gives out. My voice is a little bit shaky, it seems like, but hopefully it will hold for the whole stream. I do have water with me, so should be fine, hopefully. Alright, gonna make sure I have some sound. There, I think that is good for me. I hope it's good for you guys as well. And we are starting with The Revenant's Dream, which is quite interesting, because the Switch version of the game that I do have, it is called The Dreams of the Revenants. So that's quite interesting to see the title story for the game. Very interesting. Ah, and we are at the tree, of course. I should have known. I should have known. I wonder if this is the same as Fragment, or if it's going to be different. We will see. Farewell, Jacobo. Until our souls cross paths once more in the boundless sphere of fate. Goodbye, Morgana. She believed that was the end of it all. That by releasing their souls from the curse, they would all return to their rightful places. That the realm containing the cursed mansion would dissipate, and the natural order of the world would take care of the rest. Both she and the good-hearted young man who had guided her to her salvation believed that. It's interesting that we have it like in third-person point of view. That's quite rare, I feel. Or is it? Am I like misremembering? It feels like we have mostly been following like first-person point of view, except for like when the maid has told the stories, of course, but that is not really the case here. So interesting. Yeah, mysteries will be revealed, hopefully. But the young man underestimated how strong his love was. And the girl underestimated how wholly and thoroughly he blamed himself. Aw, Jacopo. He sent her off, and then remained in place. He could not forgive himself for what he had done. Oh, this is like what they were talking about in reincarnation, that he blamed himself so much that he was just prepared to like not be reborn at all. He just wanted to like disappear, or at least like be more punished, you know? And so he did not deserve to move on. The Revenant's Dream. I can already tell that this is going to be good. The next thing she realized, she was in a field of gold. Wheat rolling in the wind like a golden ocean. The sky blue as sapphire. The breeze almost startlingly warm. It was an unbelievably gentle view. And one she did not recognize. She had never seen this place before. Never been there before. Yet looking out at it now, she felt emotional. It was almost terrifyingly beautiful. And as if drawn in by it, the girl took a step forward. With each subsequent step, the soft sound of crunching beneath her feet grew more distinct. Evidently her soul had begun taking physical form. And it was her body from life that the golden ocean created for her. She raised her left arm, which had been severed before she was placed in captivity. It was whole. Still uncertain, she placed a hand on her cheek. There, she found none of the scars or the rough texture of the markings that had caused her so much torment in life. What's going on here? She was perplexed. Where was this place? When was it? And what was she doing here, in that form no less? The girl continued walking, in spite of her consternation. In spite of herself at that. It was the gentlest domains that had always caused her the most pain. The most pleasant memories were the sharpest knives. If her life had taught her one thing, it was that. And from then on, she had done everything in her power to eliminate those things. Which was why she had locked the warmly inviting master bedroom in the cursed mansion and threw the key into the painting. But now, she was being drawn into another such realm. She felt as though she needed to push forward. And soon, as she approached the far edge of the wheat field, she caught sight of a figure. Seeing it, she stopped dead with a gulp. She knew what this world was. It was his world. Much like she had crafted her own realm to contain her curse, he too had built himself a world of illusion. Upon reaching this realization, a flood of images and memories rushed over her. See, this is interesting, because when we read Fragment, I kind of thought that it was Morgana that had created this dream to, like as a final gift to Jacopo, but apparently it is Jacopo's own creation. And that creation pulled her in. Interesting. Hello, Dodo, welcome. We are following Morgana, it seems, but it's like written in third person, so Morgana and Jacopo from like the dream that they had together. But this was not unusual, as she had experienced projections of others' memories in the cursed mansion as well. The living and the dead perceived the world differently. For while the living were bound by their bodies, the dead were bound by recollections and emotions. Nonetheless, it had been Michelle, not her, who had dived into the memories directly. So this was her first time truly experiencing the phenomenon herself. So Jack will curse Morgana? Yeah, in a way, I guess. Or I wouldn't really call it curse per se, but yeah, he definitely did something here. Interesting. But she was, like, from what I remember, she was kind of kind to him as well, so I'm guessing she will kind of like give him a final gift, even though the dream itself isn't by her creation. But we will see, we will see. Though she was uncertain as to whether the experience was intensified by her own involvement in these specific memories. They were of her as a child, of the young man applying ointment to her face every day for 3 years. She would claim it unnecessary, insult him, complain in any way she could, but still the young man came back the next day. Even on days she fought to the point of truly angering him, he still applied the ointment. He was a strange man, she thought. For what purpose did he pay her so much mind? No other men wanted to get near her. The hideous scars covering her face were quite an effective deterrent. And most would probably cut off their own hands before volunteering to touch them. Well, not being allowed to move on is kind of a curse. Yeah, true. He alone was different though. One day he chastised her for making the trek to the graveyard every day, in rain or snow or anything in between. But she realized now that his criticism applied to him as well. In the pouring rain or the midst of a blizzard, in winds so strong that could knock a grown man to the ground, or even when he was hurt or sick himself, he never missed a day coming to find her at the graveyard. Next, she saw the rising sun, being carried on his back, traveling a different path home than the one she knew. The stench of decomposing flesh, unavoidable in alleys of the slums. Her surroundings utterly repugnant, yet the sunrise oddly enchanting. The sun's light even reaches this deep, dark corner of the world. I mean, of course it does, but I don't know. For some reason it seems particularly bright today. She said nothing in response, but she felt the same way. She had spent her whole life looking down at her feet, never taking the time to look up and appreciate the sky. And she likely never would have either. Never been able to see the beauty in the rising sun without a nudge. And subsequently, whenever the evil lord would show himself in her dreams, she was able to close her eyes and block him out, until eventually she was no longer able to remember his face or the sound of his voice. Her wounds were at last beginning to heal. He had given her so much, an ordinary life, an ordinary happiness, the freedom from having to be special, and warmth she had never before known. But those memories only served to salve her wounds. Every image of the slave boy showing her kindness was another crack in her foundation. I can't. He killed me! With the same hands he had used to treat her wounds, he later took her life. It tainted all her memories, shattered the illusion of warmth, ruined her all the way down to her soul, turned everything into hatred and anger. A fury so intense that even a young saint's unconditional love was insufficient to assuage it. The only reason she had managed to maintain her composure at the very end was because Michelle was there with her, holding her hand. She would not have gone to see him at all otherwise. But now she was alone. So she would leave. She had no interest in seeing that man again. And when she made to head back the way she had come, she caught a glance at the shadowy figure's condition. It was beaten and broken, crumbling away. She looked down in silence on the shadow, which barely maintained its own form. She had seen souls decay to this state before, such as Michelle's when he arrived at the mansion after centuries lost, broken down and reformed again and again, with only Giselle's voice as his guide. By the time he found his way there, he was unrecognizable. Hardly a wisp of a spirit, incapable of individual thought, blindly following Giselle's lead. She understood why Michelle's soul had taken so much damage. He had been abused and mistreated to an unimaginable degree in his entire life. It made sense that he would wish for an ending more permanent than even death. But him? What are you doing so broken? She could not understand what had brought him to this point. He was the perpetrator, a monster. No matter how kind he had been to her before, that did not change what he had done after that. So what did he think he was doing, looking so mangled and beaten? If she left him there, before long, his soul would disappear for good. Rubbed out of existence, never to return to the boundless sphere of fate. Good. Let him. She bit her lip. Yes, let him. Then she would be free of his torture once and for all. She would never have to see him again. Never have to torment herself with thoughts of him. And what a relief that would be. So she tried to turn back, but her body would not let her. An emotion she did not understand had welled up in her breast. It was pity, though she could not put a name to it herself. It was an emotion she had never felt during her time as the witch. And in fact, were the witch here, she would have cackled joyously at the sight, pointing a skeletal finger at the pathetic thing he had become and telling him how much he deserved it. But she was no longer that witch. And furthermore, she had been blessed with unconditional love by Michelle and Giselle, and the benevolent portion of her soul, which she had rent from herself to create the white-haired girl, was beginning to return to its rightful place. She thought she heard a voice from within, telling her that only she could save him. She frowned. Why should she have to save him after all the pain and suffering he had caused for her? The voice within spoke. Michelle had stepped forward to save her after all the pain and suffering she had put him through. Giselle too held no grudge after being imprisoned in the mansion by her for centuries, happily joining Michelle on his quest. She took a single step forward. The weight swayed as she did, making the scene even more dreamlike. Initially, she had been irritated to find him here, trying to hide from his sins in this realm of illusion. But now, she was beginning to realize that was not the case. His memories and feelings flowed over her with more clarity this time. This was what he could have had if he had not made all those mistakes. And this was the place he had hoped to show her one day. He was not hiding from his sins. He was attempting to atone for them. He had condemned his sins, lamented his failures, and forced himself to look at this vision of the world he had let slip through his fingers. Again and again, until it had destroyed his soul. This was his punishment for himself. And not only for what he had done to Morgana, but her other half, the white-haired girl, as well. She had said in a letter that she wished to see his homeland, and he had failed to see that through as well. Oh my god, yeah, that's right. This is so good, and it's so heartbreaking. Like, as I've said multiple times, Jacopo is my favorite character because he is so very human. Like, those mistakes he made, like, I get it. I get why he is tormenting himself over them. Because, like, if I were in his shoes, I would have too. Like, I cry if I make someone else even the slightest bit sad. So, like, making his kind of mistakes, yeah, I would definitely torture myself forever until my soul crumbled away and disappeared forever. Definitely. So I get it, and it's just so tragic because he's not evil on the inside. Like he just screwed up so badly, and for Morgana to see this as well, it's like I don't even have words to describe what I'm feeling, but like this is so... I'm just loving this. It's so good. Twice he had broken what he was supposed to care about most. Twice he had crushed her. And he could never forgive himself for that. Not even after she had released him from her curse. You truly are the biggest fool in all the world. She had never in all her time seen more of a disaster of a man. Well, that's a pretty good and accurate description, I would say. Jacobo is a disaster of a man. Though she was beginning to realize that part of the reason he had done this to himself was because she had rejected his offer to make amends, told him she would not punish him any further. Not to mention, he was not entirely at fault for his action in his second life. She had wished to see his life in ruins. She had, in a sense, placed him on that path herself. But he was not one who could place the blame for his actions on others. Everything was always his responsibility, and his alone. He was like that in his first life, and his second, and in the illusory alternate scenario where Michelle intervened. Ultimately, I'm the one responsible, he said on their march to atonement. And I suppose, to make sure their next lives go a little better, he said, excluding himself from any potential redemption. That's also very true. It's things like these why I love this game. It's like everything is in the details, like nothing is unimportant, like every word, every sentence has weight to it. And I just love that because you can read this story again and again and discover new things and new hidden meanings behind words, or it's just so good. His tough shell is still holding him together. Yeah. But that's the thing about Jacobo, like he's only tough on the outside. On the inside he's not. And yeah. But he would never let anyone else know that. So, yeah. So what though? That doesn't change what he did. Are you saying I should have sent him off with a smile? That I should have set aside my hatred to make the man who hurt me feel better? She took another step forward, the amorphous shadow, still unsure of her own position. The closer she got, the more she wanted to run away. What would she say? What would she do? She had not an inkling of an idea. Not a single fully formed thought about what came after this. The shade noticed her, lifting its head. She tensed up. It was hideous, hardly even recognizable as human. But she could tell, somehow, that it was smiling at her. It must have been made up of all the things he had wanted to do for her, she thought. The shade seemed to think she was part of the illusion. In that case, she thought, in that case, she could just play along with it. Pretending she was another phantom in this dreamscape would reduce the pressure on her, giving her time to think. Though in truth, she likely wanted to indulge in that fantasy herself. The long-lost possibility of nothing going wrong, of him finding their homeland. Even knowing it was all a sham, an insignificant sliver of a dream, she probably still wanted to partake in its warmth. And maybe then she would be able to give him a genuine smile. So, what's on the agenda for today? Initially, she only intended to play along with the illusion, but in time, she found herself being drawn into the dream world as well. A fantasy where he had never become the Lord, she never the witch, and the both of them lived uneventful lives in their undiscovered homeland. It was pleasant and peaceful, and she soon began enjoying it in earnest. She had turned off her mind, simply started accepting things as they happened. But she was only able to do because he was hardly recognizable as him. She felt like she had really gone back to being a 16-year-old girl, like she had grown up a normal life, not filled with tragedy. And oh, how wonderful that would have been if it could have been true. He asked her to sing for him, so she brought him into the shade of a large tree. He told her he had borrowed a lute, but he held nothing in his amorphous hands, so she merely played along. In his vision of this realm, there were others like us for him to borrow from. They sat down in the shade of the tree and sang, only her voice to carry the tune. Like Michelle in the same condition, the shade was barely able to produce any coherent sound, let alone music. But still, she could tell what he was trying to say and how he was saying it. The longer she spent in the realm of illusion, the more her own state of mind reverted to those days. The 3 years when she had been able to experience happiness like anyone else, but continuing until she reached the age of 16. She was smiling and laughing, though she hardly realized it herself. Nor did she recall that she had explicitly told him previously that she could not smile for him. That is just so heartbreaking. And I like to think that this is their happy ending in reincarnation, that they were able to get past everything eventually and do this in earnest. I really want that for them. And since reincarnation had such an open ending, I wish to believe that that's the actual case. At least in my head it is. In time, she even found herself able to speak of her younger days, something she had not told him even in life. How she was known as a saint, how her blood had miraculous powers, and the people of her village began worshipping her for it. She had, on some level, wanted to talk about that with him in life. Wanted to open herself up to him more. Wanted him to know more of who she really was. You're just an ordinary girl. He spoke in an unearthly voice, like thousands of rocks scraping against one another. But to her ears, it was the sound of the young slave man's voice. His slightly exasperated, always gentle tone. She smiled. You've said as much so many times now, I'm almost beginning to believe it, she said, wondering if he would have been the one to give her warmth if things had gone differently. Obviously, that was but a hypothetical future, and one they could have never reached, no less. But she had softened up enough to entertain such silly fantasies. She also thought about her homeland. Not a small, isolated village where she had been born, but someplace further up her bloodline, her real father's home. Would you like to meet him? She was telling him of her father when he suddenly asked her that. She was not sure, and it was not something she really needed to think about. There was no family here for her to find anymore, after all. But she had indulged herself so deeply in the past that reality was not a concern. She spoke of her father with a hint of sadness in her voice, to which the shade responded with a sudden surge of rage. The whole dreamscape whirled around him, and a metallic smell of blood permeated the region. He wanted to seek out her father, and met out divine justice, and the world twisted to fit his image. Any form of violence is forbidden, she shouted, attempting to calm his fury. "Not even if it is for my sake," she continued. Any time he had managed to obtain any form of power, it had led him down the path of destruction. He knew no other way to wield it. And because doing so had shown to be effective in accomplishing his immediate goals, he had never bothered to look for any other solutions, which ultimately resulted in him being unable to trust anyone, because he only understood power as a blunt object. He was a soft, cowardly man deep down, but because he learned to kill. "I don't want you to hurt anyone else ever again." The more he hurt others, the more he hurt himself. This was a lesson that was long, long overdue for him. The shadow stared at her in silence for several minutes, as her blood and fiery rage twisting the illusory realm slowly receded. When it was gone, the shade too seemed to have returned to normal, nodding and saying, "All right, I won't." She let out a sigh of relief. She had slipped entirely back into her childhood. I'm liking this a lot. Like, this is basically the same story as Fragment, but we are seeing it from a different perspective, and we are seeing more. It's not just like dialogue and we don't really know what's going on. It's more fleshed out, and I like it a lot. And I do like that we like kind of got to the core of Jacob's character here. Like, he's a soft and cowardly man. I do, yeah, that's absolutely 100% true. That's who he really is. But power twists him into something else, and because he is, well, soft and cowardly, he's not the person that should be in power because he can't handle it. And also I do like that we get to see Morgana indulge in the dream. Like, this is what she wanted too. Like, even if she doesn't really want to give him a happy dream necessarily, she does it for herself as well. Because she also wanted this life, if everything had gone differently. So I just find it so beautiful. They talked more about everything and nothing, such as the Midsummer Festival, the memory of which filled her with yearning for those times. When everyone was still together, him, his friend Maria, his companion Gratian, and the eternally cheerful Jaren. She was never terribly fond of gatherings of that many people, and that had not changed even now, but she was able to reminisce about it and admit it had not been entirely awful. I can totally understand that as well. Like, being an introvert, big groups of people are uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. But like, if it's still in like a good company, even if it is a bigger one, and it is like with people that you actually love, it's still wonderful memories that you make, even though you might be uncomfortable in the moment. That it had been an important formative moment of her youth, and probably the same for the rest of them as well. The three girls holding hands and dancing in a circle, him playing a tune on a lute and his friend providing a beat. It was a marvelous day. Words to let you know people from the big group. Yeah, that is true. Like, it really depends, of course, but like, I'm just saying, like, if you are an introvert, I mean, there's always a scale of things. So, I mean, even if you are an introvert, you can still enjoy it. But like, if I'm taking myself, for example, because I'm a very big introvert, I don't like big groups. I don't feel comfortable in those kind of situations, and also I get so tired as well. Like, it's not just me being like uncomfortable, it's just I get so tired by being that social, and the more people, the more tired I get. But like, if I know the people, I will probably still have fun. Like, even if it is exhausting, I will still enjoy it somewhat. And I will create fond memories of it. But if it's like a big group and I don't know anyone, then no, absolutely not. That's just awful. But if it is a big group and it's people that I know and love, I might like complain about it. I might become very quiet and like sit in a corner and don't say much, but I will probably still enjoy it and like have fond memories of it, even if it doesn't seem like it to an extroverted person. So yeah, I feel like I can relate to Morgana a lot in that regard. As she reflected, she realized he had been chasing overly ambitious dreams from the very beginning. All his talk of going out into the world, of taking her with him. And he was no different here in this realm of illusion. Eventually she grew tired of hearing his fantasies, telling him, "Climb down off your high horse and adjust." If he was going to keep chasing after stupid dreams, she would laugh at him every time. If he was going to keep chasing after impossible ideals, she would drag him back down to earth. That way he would never. Then I'll just have to find a new dream. Excuse me? Her mouth hung open in a mix of exasperation and shock, and perhaps a trace of anger. She wanted to shout, tell him all his idiotic dreams ended with him in shambles. But he seemed unable to pick up on her trepidation, continuing unfazed. "I'm going to win your heart." She stood aghast. That was the last thing she ever expected to hear from him. Even knowing this whole world was his fantasy about what he wished he could have done for her. She was conflicted. She felt many things, but flattered was a line she would never cross. No matter how much she had reverted to her younger self here, her present self still remained. "You murdered me. There's nothing you can do to win my heart, not a single thing." She found herself very close to saying what she felt, but she set her agitation aside to let the dream continue a bit longer, for her own peace of mind more than his. From that point, he became almost impressively brazen, even asking her to call him by his name, to which she frowned and said in no uncertain terms, "Why would I waste my breath?" visibly disheartening him. After some time having to watch him mope, she could bear it no longer and attempted to raise a new subject. But whether she asked him about learning to play the lute or going fishing together, the only response she received was a half-hearted nod. She sighed, at a complete loss, and then the shadow spoke. "Will you say my name?" Again. Why was he so fixated on such a stupid, insignificant thing? But as he continued, she realized his request was more pitiful and heartfelt than she had ever heard from him. "I don't want you to forget," she gasped. "I don't want you to forget me again." Cracks developed in the shadow. "I don't want you to forget what I look like." It wavered, shook, crumbled. The sound of my voice. But still he pleaded desperately. "Or how I feel about you." The man who refused to lean on anyone was begging for her validation. "I don't want you to forget what we talked about." They were all things she had long since forgotten about him. What kind of man I was. Things she had locked away in the deepest recesses of her mind. Or all the time we shared together. Memories of it flowing with so much warmth they hurt. Please. She cast it all out. His name, his face, his everything. "Don't forget me." which was what had allowed her to mistake him for the Lord. She felt a chill listening to the shade beg and plead endlessly. What was she supposed to do here? At the very least, this meant the end of the peaceful, trouble-free illusion. "Why would you ask me that now?" she said, her voice strained. She was hoping to bask in the illusion a while longer. The shadow said nothing. It simply sat there, waiting for her answer. She mulled over the question for a while, then took another step toward it. She was close enough to touch it now, but she would never do that. A feeling welled up in her breast, a mixture of wanting to scream, burst into tears, and throw things around like a small child. She forced it back, looking down on the shade. If I had remembered, would anything have been any different? Could we have not ended up so far down the wrong path? If I had gone and found you, would that have stopped you from becoming what you did? There were 1,000 things she could have done differently. If, after taking up at the cottage on the lake, she had gone into town even once, she could have found out they had a new lord. Maybe he was the one who had sent that night to visit her cottage, who she had sent away without talking to. Not to mention, if she had only told him about her childhood, the rumors about her blood having healing powers, he would have been able to make the connection between her and the lakeside witch. If she had done something, maybe she could have stopped him from veering off the straight and narrow. In fact, she was likely the only person who could have stopped him. Why am I blaming myself for his mistakes? He's the only one responsible for his choices. She did not know what to do. She had been at a loss ever since learning the truth. The answers had only brought her more pain, and so she had buried them away somewhere out of sight. That must be why. That must have been why she had not yet returned to her rightful place. While she had been brought onto salvation by the hands of an angel, ceased being the witch, the girl inside was as wounded and suffering as ever. "Can I hold your hand?" The shade resumed its pleading. Its desperation clawed at her chest. And so, rather than coldly denying the request, she found herself saying, "Do as you please." The shadow slowly extended its hand up to hers, as if scared. It was not playing its part very well. This was supposed to be a dream where nothing had gone wrong between them after all. But the illusion had begun to give way to harsh reality. The reality of having murdered the girl he loved. The reality of having been brutally abused and killed by the man she had leaned on for support. They had both once cared for each other in a very similar way. Yet the end result was not love, but terrible tragedy. He was terrified to show someone affection with hands that had only ever brought destruction. And so before he did, he said, "I promised I wouldn't touch you without permission." She knew it was just an excuse, though, that he was simply afraid, worried about putting his bloodied hands on her, that he might hurt her again, that he might corrupt her, that he had no right to. Hi Fia, welcome, welcome. But he overcame all that, gently placing his arms around her, as if he had been waiting centuries for this moment. It was an embrace of many things. Love for her, deep regret, and, most of all, atonement. He's wanted to do this. In his arms she could feel everything he felt, since the day he locked his soul in that mansion. She thought back to that time, the unfathomable amount of time she had spent as the witch, a force of pure hatred and vengeance. His was the last soul she entrapped, and when she did, he was little more than an amorphous shadow. It took many, many years for him to regain a human form, but even then, he was unable to move or speak. Got late because dinner? Yeah, that's fine, that's perfectly fine. I hope you ate something good. He simply wailed something incomprehensible at her, again and again. At the time, I thought he was saying how much he hated me. But she was wrong. He had simply wanted to atone. But he had no idea how. Look at you, a grown man shaking like a fawn. As the shadow embraced her, it trembled, sobbing loudly into her shoulder. She had never seen him cry before, though she was unsure if this counted, since she could only feel it through the nebulous shade. Sometimes I can't tell if you have a heart of stone or of glass. Her entire body went limp. All the tension in her nerves released at once, and she felt like a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Though, I suppose I'm not terribly different in that regard. Unable to even speak my heart unless there's no one else around. Unable to face you except through this childish fantasy. Not even able to show any vulnerability. Meat sauce and pasta? Well, that sounds good to me. Pasta is always nice. Maybe. She hated to even entertain the thought, but perhaps they were more similar than she wanted to admit. Some time long ago, in the memory she had vanished away, he told her that being close made people more open with each other, and it turned out he was right about that. She began to speak, to tell him the truth of how she felt, letting spill forth the raw pain within, holding nothing back. She told him how she despised him more than anything in the world, because he showed her happiness than the depths of despair. That she had no idea what to do with him. How she did regret some of her actions, such as misdirecting her anger. He was consumed by regret over what he had done to her, but he was not the only one who had regrets. As their minds and spirits intermingled, the true shape of her wounds grew apparent. He had hurt her, but she had hurt him too. She had blamed him not only for his own sins, but for the sins of another man as well. And for that, she had laughed at him, cursed him, mocked him for trying to show something resembling care for another human being. Again and again and again and again and again and again and again. I should have known better than anyone how much he was capable of caring, though. She thought back to the decisive moment. Knowing the truth now, she finally understood the full effect of the things she had said. To an even greater degree than Michelle had told her. She had told the man who had spent 3 years looking after her, coming to apply ointment to her scarred face, rain or snow, that she despised him with all her soul, that he had ruined her life. She had not been seeing clearly at the time, but he had been teetering on the edge as well. And her saying that had been the final push. It was my words that ultimately pushed you over the edge, wasn't it? Well, it is complicated. Like, yeah, I would say that if she had not said that, it would have probably ended up differently. But like, I would never say that it is Morgana's fault, because she was not aware of what she was saying. She was delirious. And I mean, even if she wasn't, like, being captured like that and like having her arm cut off, like, how could you not hate a person that did that to you? Like, or like who ordered that done to you? Even if it wasn't the person that, I mean, even if she did see clearly and did know that it was him from the beginning, I don't see her fault in this at all. Like, yes, she probably had a role to play in how things ended up, but it was definitely not her fault. How had it all ended up like this? Why did they have to hurt each other so much? What was the turning point that sent them so far off the path? What if it was Vincent that did it to you? My god, dude, or... I say the same thing, like, I mean, come on. Vincent is a fictional character, so that's not really... it doesn't really apply. But like, if someone I loved did that to me, I would have a hard time forgiving them. Maybe I wouldn't say something like, oh, I despise you of all my being, because she only said that specific line because she thought that it was Barnier. But I would not be happy with them. I would not forgive them. I mean, considering that I still like haven't even forgiven the person that have hurt me most in my life, and he did something way less serious than this, and I still have not forgiven that person. So I mean, it wouldn't matter if it was Vincent. He's a fictional character, and my love for him is like purely in like a world of fiction, you know. I love him as a character, but, and I simp for him as a character, but like, yeah, it wouldn't matter. And I mean, if one of you guys, for example, did that to me, the people that I actually do know, I would have a hard time to forgive you. I definitely would. Maybe I wouldn't hate you and say something like, I despise you with all my being, but I would not be happy. I would not like forgive you easily. So yeah. He continued holding on to her for some time, pleading for a chance to make amends, spilling his heart, clinging to her like a little child. It was something he could never have done in life, or even in death. It was only after repeatedly crushing himself beneath overwhelming regret until he was mangled and hardly recognizable that he was able to show her his weakness, that he was able to show her his tears. But it was far too late. It was all over. Nothing he asked for was something she could give him. No matter how much he begged, she could never stop hating him, could never forgive him. Fissures began to form in the spirit. Memories of a youth brought with them emotions long lost. But at time she first directly acknowledged his kindness. It was a bitter, sweet, agonizing, suffocating, innocent feeling. Many, many ages ago, when I was still a child, I looked up to you. The sunrise she saw that morning carried on his back only seemed as beautiful as it did because he had shown it to her. She then grew to yearn the lost homeland he spoke of, admire his lofty dreams, and feel warmth in his hands as he spread the ointment. That was when the seed was planted, not only of the ability to feel joy, but love as well. I might have even had some fondness for you. And having said that, she noticed the clear droplets rolling down her cheeks. After Michelle finished unveiling the truth, she shouted, "I cried for him!" in a frenzy. And those tears she had shed contained all her feelings for him. On the day of her 12th birthday, that terrible, tragic day, she cried and told the man in the slave cart, "I'm sad because I didn't get a chance to show my gratitude to people very dear to me." And that was true. She was grateful to not only the young slave man, but the girls of the brothel as well. She had wanted to open up to them. But the larger portion of her tears were for just one person. She cried for him. She cried for the man who had spent so long trying to help her. She cried because she had not been able to thank him. She cried because she believed him to be dead. She cried for him then. So who did she cry for now? Were these tears for him as well? Were they for herself? No, they were for both of them. My God, this story is taking all of my water glass. I am almost out of water. Oh my God, I'm looking at the time as well. No wonder, we have been going on for a while. And this is only the first story. She decided to let the illusion continue on a while longer. She knew it was foolish. She had mixed feelings about being here and interacting with him as she had when she was younger. But she had softened up enough to not only simply ignore the warmth it also made her feel. She had found it in herself to accept the seed of kindness sprouting within her. She had found it in herself to acknowledge how he felt. So she would use the dream to lead him to his next destination, under the guise of him holding her hand and leading her. Out of the claws of his foolish fantasy, to be released once and for all. She would guide him back into the void, that boundless sphere of fate, so that he may live again. They set off through the fields of waving gold. She squeezed her eyes shut, envisioning the young man she once knew. And when she opened them again, he was there, holding her hand and smiling softly at her. You know, Jacopo, I really hope we don't ever cross paths again. Nothing good could possibly come from us meeting in the next life. I'm tired of having to deal with you. I hate you, and I pray I never have to see you again. But should you wish to see me, and should that wish take priority over my own, promise you'll treat me well. And if you can manage that, then And that was the end of that. That was so good, guys. Like, I'm not even sad that it was basically a repeat of Fragment, because it contained so much more and gave so much perspective to that story. Hello Daniel, welcome. Remnant's Dream, definitely one of my favorite short stories, especially in Fata. It and Fragment are pretty cathartic for me. Yeah, I enjoy this as well a lot, and Fragment too. I can really see like why they chose to name the Switch version of the game The Dreams of the Revenants, because it is very fitting. Like, it's I'm losing words here, but yeah, I do feel like it's fitting because the story is just as much Jacopo and Morgana's story as it is Michelle and Giselle's, and like even more so with reincarnation. And reincarnation is the thing that is included in the Switch version that is not included in like any other version. So yeah. Yeah, it definitely is almost like a prologue for reincarnation. I agree with that, and I think that's why they put Fragment like at the very end of Requiem as well, to be like a prologue for reincarnation. Yeah, this was more of a Morgana's point of view, exactly. So I do like that we got to see both perspectives there. This one was more like, because I did say that when I was reading Fragment that so Morgana like gave him a final nice dream, blah blah blah, but this showed us that that wasn't really the case, and that her feelings for him still is very much complicated, as they always have been, and that it was like his own creation in order to punish himself, but that she just indulged in it because she kind of also wanted to like experience that and to like let herself. I feel like this was a way for her as well to like let go, because she never got a chance to, because she spent all her time as the witch hating him. And then when she found out the truth about who he really was, she didn't really know what to do with that. She never got any closure, and I feel like this was kind of the closure she needed in order to like move on to her next life. But yeah, I have been talking for so long, my throat is trying to kill me. So I say it's time to take a small stretchy break, and then we continue. So don't go anywhere, but do take this time to stretch as well if you want to, because it's not good to sit still for too long. And we'll see each other here soon again, so I will be back. Alright, I am back and everything seems to be in working order, that's good. And also I have more water with me, so I should be able to continue for a little while longer. Lost is another one I really like too. Been about a year since I last gone through these short stories, yeah? Well, it's a good time to reacquaint yourself with them then. I think I have read a few of them, because if I remember correctly, there were like a few short stories with the PC version of Requiem, if I'm not misremembering, or if it even was in the main game, The House in Fata Morgana, I don't really remember. But I don't remember which ones it was, and I don't remember what they were about, so this is basically completely blind for me, which is very enjoyable. So yeah, okay, we are moving on to Lost. Ooh, it's a pretty background. I'm not sure if I recognize this music. Sounds pretty though. I know there are a few you can only find on some online websites or something, but I haven't read them. Okay, yeah. I honestly have no clue about that. Like, I have only gotten through what the games have given me, basically. Master, I was wondering if I could ask for some time off. One autumn afternoon, a young maid stood in Jacopo's study, requesting a vacation, effectively signaling her intent to quit. He lit a cigar with practiced motions, took in a deep breath, and then blew the smoke out in a long, slow stream. Okay, so we are following Jacopo from the third door then. Very nice. I think it's music from Jacopo and Maria flashback. Is it though? Isn't that one... my god, I don't know what it's called, but like... there are multiple versions of it. I want to say Accento Delle, but that's not right. But no, I don't think this is it. I don't recognize this one actually. Again, he thought, making sure not to let it show on his face. What's your reason? He asked. Not satisfied with how you've been treated. I feel we've been quite generous. Oh no, not at all, she said. In fact, you have been much better to me than my previous house. I have no complaints about the treatment I have received. Then why? If I knew you would quit so soon, I never would have hired you in the first place. But you just started showing some improvement. Now all that time and money's gone to waste. I'm sorry. I'm asking for a reason, not an apology, he said. His voice a mixture of exhausted, irritated, and scolding that only made the girl recoil further. He let out another heavy sigh. Are kids these days all this soft? Christ, he thought. Another complaint to add to the mountain built up and locked inside. It's because, Out with it. You know I don't like it when people aren't straight with me. The young maid looked up at her master apprehensively. His dark brown eyes seemed to pierce straight through her soul, making her feel like she was being squeezed from the inside out. Other maids had told her he was a lot softer than he used to be, but she couldn't imagine that at all. He was a rich, unmarried, testy man in his 30s. Everything about him was terrifying. And despite that, she was willing to face up to him and beg to quit because there was something even worse in the mansion. The head maid scares me. Jacopo raised an eyebrow. He had been expecting her to say he scared her. Did the head maid do something to you? He asked. No, she didn't. Then why? Ash fell from Jacopo's cigar. His irritation levels were rising. The young maid looked up at him, fear in her eyes. Are you not scared of her too, master? Her appearance never changed it at all. The past few years, there had been an increase in maids quitting for vague, not specific reasons, and he finally had his answer. When Jacopo purchased the mansion, he was 22 years old, taking the first step to expanding his family's influence to the new world. Expectations for him were high, and the pressure was almost suffocating, but he was still an optimistic, ambitious young man at the time. He had to do this, and he had to do it right, and it was that determination that allowed him to maintain the softness in his heart beneath the tough businessman demeanor. Which was probably what led him to hiring the mysterious maid to be found in his newly acquired estate. She was there when he first stepped through the door, calling him master and showing him around the property. Then once she was done, she started working. Jacopo wasn't sure what to make of the woman, but she seemed to know what she was doing, and over time his suspicions slowly transformed into respect. Where's your master? He asked. My previous master passed away, she said with a perfect smile. As a new owner of this mansion, you are my current master. Assuming that meant the previous owner had just made no arrangement for her to transfer Assuming that meant the previous owner had just made no arrangements for her to transfer anywhere after he passed, Jacobo decided to let her stay and work as she wished. It was the responsibility of those with power to give work to those without, and he felt some satisfaction in taking her in. And for more than 10 years, she did that work almost flawlessly. And as long as she wasn't causing trouble, he didn't see any reason to pry into personal matters. How long she had been here, why she worked as a maid, or who she even was, he never bothered asking her anything. But now, he was 35, and the maid still looked to be in her early 20s, just as she had the day he arrived. Jacobo leaned back in his chair, staring absently up at the ceiling, watching the smoke from his cigar waft upwards. The young maid who quit was long gone, probably living with her family. He considered introducing her to a new house, but he had so many maids quit on him, he was running out of acquaintances to foist them on. There was a knock on the door. He leaned forward and said, "Who is it?" "It is I," came the voice of the head maid. He called her in, and the woman who stepped through the door was indeed identical in appearance to 13 years prior. She floated gracefully to the center of the office, not making a single sound. He felt almost like he was watching a ghost. "Well, you're not entirely far off there, Jacobo." But yeah, Daniel, I agree. This story is pretty nice so far. I like that we get to see both Jacobo and Giselle in the same setting. That is very nice. "One of the younger maids left today," she said, "so I wanted to discuss with you how we should proceed redistributing the work." "I leave that to you, as always. I'll take care of finding a replacement." "Yes, master," she said with a bow. Usually, that would be the end of the discussion, and she would dismiss herself. But for some reason, she stood there unmoving, her deep, unreadable eyes of jade locked on his. "What is it?" he asked with a frown, mildly uncomfortable. "Have you considered dismissing me?" she said, wearing the same faint smile she always had on. Yeah, it is very rare that it's just these two. That's very true, so I'm liking it a lot, just because of that reason. Yeah, you're right, we didn't get much of the maid in door 3. She was very absent there. Basically only mentioned that Maria was kind of scared of her and such. Her face was like a perfectly carved mask. I know that the maids have been quitting because of me. They've seen what I look like, and so rumors have been going around. The young girls are especially impressionable, so they are more likely to believe them. Have you considered dismissing me? Jacobo tapped his cigar against the ashtray on his desk, then leaned back in his chair. He had considered it before, but he always came to the same conclusion. Every other maid could quit, and it wouldn't slow down work as much as losing you. Oh my! You think quite highly of me. I know a capable worker when I see one, and you are more than capable. Hell, sometimes I wonder if you've been doing this job for hundreds of years. My, she said, her smile widening. You jest. If I had been a maid for hundreds of years, that would make me a ghost. Well, aren't you? He almost said. Oh, well, 5 or 6 years ago, he might have been able to chalk it up to good makeup, but 13 years wasn't something you could just hide like that. I wouldn't say that. Like, some people just don't age. There are some people like that. That just look the same always. I can't really come up with an example right now, but yeah. Like, isn't Avril Lavigne someone like that? And that's why it goes around a lot of rumors that she has like a doppelganger or something like that. But there definitely are people that barely age. And I myself, I wouldn't say that I don't age, but like a lot of people do believe that I am a lot younger than I am. So yeah, some people just look young very long. That not being the case here though, but you know. Tom Cruise getting younger? I haven't seen him like any recent pictures of him lately, so I can't tell, but I believe you if you say so. Jacopo didn't like talk of ghosts, or the supernatural, or any of that nonsense, but it had reached a point he simply couldn't think of any natural explanation. Why don't we have a little chat? I'd like to get to know a little about you. Her eyes went wide at his proposition. It had been a while since he'd seen her make a face other than a pristine smile, but even her surprise seemed artificial. With her, only the most restrained of emotions came across as genuine. Is it going to rain tomorrow, Master? You have never shown an interest in me before. Indeed. You might want to set your overcoat out. Now, what was it you wished to know? What are you? He asked, not dancing around the question. The head maid gave a little giggle in response. This is so interesting, you guys. I'm loving this discussion here, where this is going. I wonder if she will indulge him, like tell him the truth, or if she will like try to make up a natural explanation for it. He looks basically the same as he did in the 80s. Okay, yeah. I'm not very like knowing of Tom Cruise about it, because honestly, I'm not a huge fan. Like, I loved him in Interview with the Vampire, but that's about it. Like, I don't know. Do you have like people, like actors and stuff like that just gives you bad vibes and that you like avoid for no apparent reason? Like, Tom Cruise is one of those people. Like, he's a good actor, but like, I don't know. It's something that I don't really like, so I tend to not like watch his movies or anything. I am but a mere maid, Master. Yeah, that's about what I figured you'd say. Next, who was your previous master? He was a very precarious man, drifting between man and beast. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Doesn't sound like a very good master to me. Did he even pay you? No, sir. The house was in shambles at the time. He let out another long stream of smoke. When on earth was she speaking of? When he had bought the property, it was a little outdated, but otherwise in good shape. If he took her at her word, that would have had to have been at least 30 years ago. He wanted to press her further, but he knew she would just laugh and brush the question aside. You saw the recent Top Gun 2 movie? Okay. Was it any good? Not that I have seen even the first one. But still asking. Leonardo DiCaprio for me? Okay, you don't like Leonardo DiCaprio? Okay, that's... Okay, yeah. I mean, each to their own. I don't have a problem with him, but I mean, I guess a lot of people don't have problems with Tom Cruise, so... That's interesting. Guess it's been a couple of years, DiCaprio, I can understand, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen any DiCaprio movies either, like, except for like Titanic, so I can't really say anything about that, honestly. I am not one person that is very, very well versed in movies at all. Like, I rarely watch movies, and when I do, I very often like rewatch favorites. So, yeah. You can tell me anything about movies and I will believe you, because, yeah. Many celebs are creepy, the less you know about them and only appreciate their work, the better. True. Very true. There is a saying, don't get to know your heroes, so, you know. He's slimy, okay, well, I don't really see that, but then again, I have only seen him in Titanic, so, and that's an old movie, so. Oh. So he took another puff of his cigar and asked, "And who was before that?" "The father of two adorable little children. He was rarely at the house, though, so his wife, son and daughter served as my masters. They were a noble family, and they treated me quite well." "I didn't know nobility had lived here." "My. You believe me, master?" "Oh, so you realize it sounds ridiculous, do you?" "I understand that it may seem somewhat unbelievable to you, yes." "Well, I'm not completely taking you at your word, that's for sure. This is just a casual conversation after all, and I know we're all prone to some embellishment. So, who was before that?" "The sibling's grandfather. He was the man who taught me how to be an Abigail. A maid. He loved roses, and I would often go out and admire the flowers with him." Jacobo twitched at the word rose. Ooh, yeah, I guess he would, remembering what he did to the rose garden. A reminder of a great mistake he'd made years ago. He snuck a glance at the window, closed his eyes and whispered, "I see." "All right," he continued. "Who was before that?" "Before him was..." Her gaze drifted upward, and then a rift formed in her persona, barely perceptible, but it didn't slip past Jacobo's notice. She still wore that eerily flawless smile, but hair-thin cracks had appeared in her jade eyes, allowing a carefully hidden murkiness to seep to the surface. For a split second, she seemed to be wearied to her core, looking out toward a faraway land she could never reach. And then it was gone just as quickly. I thought you disliked the Orlando Bloom Toothy, or is it just Legolas? Wait, what? I must have missed that one. Does she? DiCaprio at 45 dated a 22-year-old, which is kind of okay, yeah, oh yeah, I do remember, I have read something like that. Yeah, that is, 22 is an adult, so as long as it's consensual, but it is a little bit like, I can see that, yeah. I want to say like age is just a number, but it depends on the situation, and like 22, yeah, it is an adult, but it's still very young, I feel. Like, would she have been 30, it would have been like different. But yeah, it's a bit icky, I agree. Before him was my dearly beloved, whose return I am still awaiting. For that reason, I hesitate to call him my master. Oh yeah, you don't like him as Legolas in The Hobbit. Well, there I agree. So it's not Legolas, the character, that is the problem. It's Legolas in The Hobbit. And I agree with that, because they did him dirty there, honestly. So yeah, I agree. I am terribly excited for their eventual return, though. Sounds complicated, he said. I won't pry any further. She gave a wide smile. It was best to just leave it at that, he thought. They weren't friends, she was a maid, and he was her master. Next question. And I don't know how I never asked you this before, Jacobo said, letting it hang in the air for a second. What is your name? Saying it out loud only emphasized how ridiculous a question it was. He'd had this woman in his hire for 13 years without so much as knowing her name. With every other maid, he knew their name, age, family history, more and more before they even signed a contract. But her, He never had a contract for her in the first place. Which was unthinkable for a man who didn't even allow himself to make the smallest of mistakes. He had no idea how he could have let this happen. The only explanation he could think of was some unnatural power diverting his attention from it. My. Ooh, I wonder what she will say here. Like, will she just say it doesn't matter? Because, I mean, she thinks she is Morgana here. But I would guess, like, saying that name would be... Yeah, this is an interesting question, definitely. I don't really watch movies or shows nowadays, mainly just read books with some visual novels every so often. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I watch more TV shows than I watch like movies, but still it's not much. It is every once in a while, but like not on the same level that I know a lot of people do. I mostly like play video games, read books or visual novels, and also like write on my own book, so I rarely have time to watch movies or shows, I feel. But when I do watch shows, I tend to binge them. So usually it goes quite quickly when I start watching a show. But movies, very rarely. You can simply call me head maid, as you have all these years. I'm the master of the house, and I'm telling you to tell me your name, he said in his unflinching business voice. To which she gave him the same smile as ever. And then, when she offered him the name she believed to be her own, the air in the room seemed to crack. Ooh! I love that they don't even say it, but like we know. She says Morgana here, and like something in him must remember that name. I mean, he even said that the name Michelle didn't really fit the white-haired girl, because he felt that, no, this is Morgana. And he so like knew that, no, this is not your name. So interesting. My name is Morgana, master. Jacob's eyes went wide. While he wasn't as prone to shouting now as he had been in his emotionally troubled 20s, that was enough to push him over the edge. No, it's not, he yelled, unsure why he was so certain. There was another crack in the air between them. He lurched out of his chair, the force sending it toppling to the floor. She, meanwhile, looked only mildly surprised. No, that name does not belong to you. Oh my, then to whom does it belong? She giggled. Every second he spent in the presence of that stony smile felt like a knife to the heart. By any reasonable measure, she was in the right. He had no place to deny someone else their name. But deep down, he just couldn't accept that name as belonging to the head maid. Master, your hand. He looked down to see his fist clenched around the still lit cigar. A faint smell of burnt flesh rose up from it, though he didn't even feel the heat. Jacobo threw the crushed cigar to the ground. He had no idea why hearing a single name had sent him into such a frenzy, and not having an explanation only agitated him further. I think that's quite enough conversation for one day. Please. Oh, it's Giselle speaking. I think that's quite enough conversation for one day. Please, just call me the head maid as you always have. Now, do excuse me, master, she said, and Jacob could only watch in silence as she drifted out of his office. Jacob's wife's bedroom was on the second floor next to his own. Specifically, the room she had used in the early days of their marriage. In response to information shared with him by a good friend, which he trusted blindly, he had moved her to the first floor. And then, still unable to trust her, he had relocated her to an entirely separate building on the property. Her room on the second floor had remained untouched since her disappearance. Knowing she was sensitive to sunlight, He had heavy, light-blocking curtains installed on the windows. And then, so the room didn't feel too gloomy, he had it furnished with white fabrics and light wooden furniture. And it was all still there. He included a room in the maid's daily cleaning duties, but many of them considered it a waste of time, so occasionally it would be neglected. In the past, he would have yelled at them for that, but now he just gave them stern reminders to do all their assigned work. Which worked, though he could tell they weren't pleased. No one actually believed his wife would ever come back. After losing everything at the age of 26, he had set out in search of his missing wife. Both with his own 2 feet and by hiring private investigators to look for her all across the globe. But even after so many years, he had nothing to show for it. Jacobo was beginning to think himself that she would never be back. But he wouldn't give up for any reason. She had waited steadfastly for him, even after being broken mentally and spiritually. So he had an obligation to do the same. It wasn't worth much, but it was the least he could do for her, being the one responsible for hurting her so. He wished to have just one last chance, to see her again and atone for all the damage he had done. That was the only thing keeping him alive that was the only thing keeping him alive, now that he had nothing else. It's just so sad to see him like this, like, he's just doomed to repeat the same mistakes, and I know in this time the curse definitely plays its role, but I mean, he's not entirely innocent, because he made this kind of mistake even in his first life without the curse. So, yeah. But as I said, I do think and hope that both him and Morgana are able to live better lives in, or rather after, reincarnation. But I do believe in it. I really do. Because he knows what he has done, and like even when he was confronting Morgana's stepfather, he said it himself that he knew now that even like verbal abuse is still abuse. So he knew what he did to the white-haired girl as well. So I believe that he would not make the same mistakes in his modern life. Can't trust that Maria girl. Well, yeah, but that was definitely because of the curse, I feel. So, yeah. He stood quietly in his wife's bedroom. On the desk sat her phenakistoscope, yellowed over the years. He could still see her calling it her phenakis wheel, with a gentle smile on her face. The same smile he had stolen from her and crushed under his feet. "It's a pleasure to meet you." He could hear her voice as clear as the day they had gotten married. Hers was a soft, almost musical voice, the sound of which he would never forget. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Michelle." They first met on the day of the wedding, in the waiting room. She was wearing a veil at the time, so it wasn't until they made their vows that he saw the brilliantly affectionate smile on her face. A perfect match for her name, he thought, which came from the Archangel Michael. There was no one for whom an angel's name was more appropriate. But now the pieces had come loose with the headmaid's earth-shaking proclamation, and they were coming together to form a different picture altogether. On the day Jacobo met his wife, somewhere deep down he felt as though he had known her some time long, long ago. That he had been searching for her that entire time, and had wanted nothing more than to bask in the light of that smile once more. And he would do anything to make sure she never lost it again. He saw a vision of a forlorn graveyard he had never seen before. Ooh, so he's like getting visions of his past life here, just like in reincarnation. Interesting. A young girl crouched before a makeshift headstone, turning back to look at him. Her smile, the same as the woman he had married. His eyes went wide, and he thought he was crying, but they were perfectly dry. He had long since lost the ability to weep. Was Michelle really your name? Jacob's soul was bound by 2 sets of chains, weighed down by 2 great transgressions. He could feel them both distinctly. He understood how terrible the things he had done were, and that he deserved no redemption. A few days later, Jacob was returning from an on-site inspection and decided to pass through the garden on the way. A woman with long black hair crouched before a small flower bed, practically blending into the night. Hearing her master's footstep, she stood up, brushed the dirt off his skirt, and gave him an ever-flawless smile. "Good evening, master. What brings you to the garden this evening?" "I was looking for you," he said. "Oh my! You have not been yourself lately, sir. Is it love? Because I am afraid my heart already belongs to someone else." "That's not funny. My heart's already taken too. And not by you." She giggled impishly. "You are quite right, master. You would never tell the object of your affection I was looking for you." "Hey, that's your boss you're talking to." Jacob sighed, glancing over at the flower bed. The whole area had once been a magnificent rose garden, but he had ordered it destroyed 9 years earlier. Enough time had passed that he was able to grow out of his irrational hatred of flowers, though. And so it was the headmaid's efforts that had brought it back to life, though on a smaller scale for the time being. "I apologize for what I did to the rose garden," he said, which elicited a bewildered stare from her. His gaze still averted, he continued. "You were fond of roses too, weren't you? You mentioned coming out to look at the flowers with one of your previous masters, the nobleman, wasn't it? And now that I think about it, you were the one who looked after the garden the most as well." The headmaid let his words hang in the air for a few moments, then gave him a quizzical look. What has gotten into him? She thought. But giving it a bit more consideration, she understood. He had had plenty of time to reflect on his mistakes, so perhaps an apology was not so surprising. She had grown so numb to the passage of time that she had forgotten Jacopo was just a young businessman, still getting his feet wet when they first met. So green that he had seen no trouble in hiring a mysterious maid who refused to talk about herself, eventually assigning her the position of head maid. Power, influence, business relationships, restless nights, constant betrayal. The pressures of the life he had chosen had corrupted him. And then, in the wake of great tragedy, he had managed to rid himself of some of that corruption. But only after he had lost the 2 people to whom that change would matter most. "You need not apologize to me for anything," she said. "As a matter of fact, I bear some fault myself for failing to see the truth. I could have stopped you, master, and I could have prevented the destruction of the rose garden too." "You're just a maid," he said. "You were in no position to see anything I couldn't. I should have caught on to Maria's scheming sooner, and I should have trusted my wife. The truth I failed to see was not theirs, it was yours, master." "Mine?" "Yes. I failed to see the kindness and love in your heart." Jacobo glared at the smiling headmaid like she just told him an offensive joke. "If that were true, I wouldn't have been so obsessed with money and personal gain. I wouldn't have killed my closest friend, and I wouldn't have abused my wife." "Were your monetary desires truly as selfish as you claim?" He clenched his teeth, turning away from her clear jade eyes. He felt like she was looking straight through him. "You wanted the money," she said, "for your homeland, your family, your friend, your beloved. Am I mistaken?" Yes, you are, he spat. While it was true he had wanted money for all those things, they were not his only motivators. He'd also wanted it for the power, to put himself on top of the world, safe from anyone who could betray him. But eventually, money and power changed from the means into the goal itself, sending him far off the path. Had he simply kept his eye on his true objective, rather than obsessing endlessly over how to protect himself, he could have done more for both Maria and his wife. The head maid gave him a somewhat melancholy smile. If you so insist, master, then yes, I am mistaken. Nonetheless, it is all in the past now, and neither of us can take back the choices we made then. Precisely. He could say it was all supposed to be for his wife or Maria, but what would that accomplish? Nothing. Allegedly, noble intentions didn't excuse the kind of pain he had caused. He let out a short sigh, casting all those thoughts aside. I was looking for you because I need you for something. Yes? What can I help you with? She asked. He turned his gaze toward the mansion, staring up a tall, long, abandoned tower. It seemed almost radiant in the light of the full moon. Come with me. When Jacobo purchased the mansion, it had already gone through repairs to bring it up to a habitable condition. There was just one area that remained conspicuously in disrepair. Initially, he was planning to have the creep tower demolished. There was no point in having it repaired only to sit unused, so he wanted to replace it with something actually useful, like a storeroom. But for some reason, which he still didn't understand, he could never bring himself to destroy the tower. The entrance to the tower was at the back of what he called the second great hall, a mostly unused hall near the back of the property. There were rumors among the maids among strange sounds and ghosts and blood dripping from the ceiling, going as far back as when Maria was still alive. Back then, he recalled telling her it was all nonsense and that he had no interest in you women's little ghost stories. But the truth was, something did seem off about the hall. Not in a frightening or unsettling way, though. Being there, he felt smothered with guilt and shackled with sorrow. So he avoided going to the second great hall as much as possible. He hadn't even had lights installed in the hall, so stepping through the door felt like entering an entirely isolated realm of darkness. Jacobo and the head maid each carried oil lamps to light their ways through the hall. At the far end stood a door not open in countless years. Just an ordinary wooden door, though, with a simple lock, not a heavy metal one with a complicated 3-key lock. As he unlocked the door with his master key, the head maid whispered, "Why did you bring me here?" She considered following it up with, "Were you too scared to come on your own?" But even she couldn't bring herself to make light of things in the tower's presence. I started paying more attention to you recently after the last maid quit. And I notice when you're not focused on something, you're looking towards one of two places, the former rose garden or this tower. So I thought it would be best to bring you with me when I came to see the tower. I see. The inside of the tower was black as the abyss, even darker than the hall leading to it. The light from the 2 oil lamps revealed a long, long spiral staircase leading up. And something stirred in the long frozen heart of the head maid at the sight of that staircase. Oh, of course it does. Both of them have memories of this tower. Like, this tower is so important. I mean, stating the obvious, but like, for Jacopo it's like a symbol of his greatest mistake, but also it's I'm guessing the reason why he didn't remove it as he initially wanted to is because his soul kind of felt that this was Morgana's final resting place and that her soul lingers there in a way. Whereas for Giselle, well, this is where she died. This is where she lost Michelle, and they both lost someone important to them in this tower. So them going up this tower together is... I do enjoy this story immensely. Like, it's interesting to see the similarities. Like, once again I see the mirroring of the stories. And I think that the House of Fata Morgana does that often and does it so well. But it's definitely an interesting story. And I do enjoy also seeing Jacopo in this era, because we haven't seen him from the third door since we left him there, basically. So it is interesting to see what happened afterwards a bit. They have memories in their soul, you could say. Yeah, definitely. Memories in their soul. That's a good way of putting it. And I mean, I guess that's why he's also like kind of getting visions from his past as well, because there are memories ingrained in his soul. Jacopo set a foot on the first stair, pressing down on it hard in several places. It let out low creaks under his weight, but didn't seem to in danger of breaking. That said, it was still an abandoned tower, at night, and nobody knew they were here. This was a terrible idea that could go wrong at any time, and he knew it. Watching him slowly climb the stairs, the headmate's chest grew tight. For an instant she wasn't seeing him, but someone else. Oh my god, my heart. My chest grows tight. Giselle, you can't do that. I know everything is fine now, but still, They were holding her by the hand, running up and up and up and... Why did you want to see the tower? She said, trying to bring herself back to the present. Hell if I know. She tilted her head. He almost never acted without a clear reason. All I do know is, I got the strangest feeling I would find something about myself here. I see, she said, putting on a smile. I too have a strange feeling that I will find something of myself here. Climbing the decaying staircase was a long, arduous process. Every so often they passed a window carved out of the stone wall. The light from the moon illuminated the path before them, guiding sinner and prisoner ever upward. Oh, I like that sentence. Sinner and prisoner. After more revolutions than the headmaid was able to count, the end was finally in sight. But there was one final obstacle before they could reach the door at the top. The next section of the staircase had collapsed. Oh. Shall we head back? The headmaid asked. If they were to attempt to proceed, one of them would undoubtedly slip and take a fall straight down to hell. Surely Jacobo would realize there was no way forward and give up. But she was wrong. Leaning against the stone wall for support, he placed his right foot on what little remained of the next stair, and then he carefully guided his left foot to the next. Several slow, meticulous steps later, a chunk of stone gave out under his weight, tumbling downward into the abyss. But even that was not enough to stop his determined procession. She watched him in silence. She was not afraid that he might fall, however, because if that were to happen, then that simply meant he was fated to die here. Yeah, Maid Giselle is very practical and morbid. But I mean, good for her, because she doesn't have to feel worried, I guess. Then again, I don't think that her cocoon state is a preferable state to be in. It was an insignificant detail to her. As long as she was able to wait for her beloved to return, nothing else mattered. But he made it across the collapsed region unharmed. It seemed the mansion was not ready to be rid of him just yet. He turned around, shining his oil lamp over the gap. "You're free to wait there." No, she said. "I will accompany you." She then gracefully lifted her skirt off the ground and followed the same crumbling path across the chasm he had. When she finally made it across, he gave her a smug smirk. "Damn, and here I thought you were going to float across like a ghost. I guess you really are alive." To which she responded with a little smile. They resumed their climb, soon reaching the top level of the tower. Beyond a door half rotten away sat a chamber with a single window high up on the wall. Through it shone a pillar of moonlight. The two of them entered the chamber, proceeding to the center of the room. The air inside was far colder than the autumn night they had left behind. It chilled them both to their bones, to their souls. Jacobo stood in place, gazing up at the window for some time. Then he walked up to the stone wall, dropping to his knees in front of what appeared to be nothing at all. He traced the irregular surface with his fingers, his hand slowly forming into a fist and dropping lifelessly to the hard floor. She could hardly see a trace of the powerful, wealthy businessman he was in that slouched form. He seemed so much smaller, on the verge of withering away. "Did you find out something about yourself here?" she asked, her voice carrying a well in the cold, empty chamber. "Yeah," he said, his voice shaking. It was far more contained in that single syllable than she could ever hope to discern. "Bless you, kitty." Tiger sneezed. And just as I was about to say something, I had a thought. I wonder if he remembers more here. If he actually remembers what he did, or if it's just a feeling that he did something wrong here, or I wonder. And probably we won't even find out. It might leave it very vaguely for us to interpret, but we will see. My god, I'm almost out of water again. But it's good to stay hydrated, so. For a moment, she thought he was crying, but from the glimpse she caught of his face, his eyes were dry, though he looked pale as a ghost. She stepped toward him, gently placing her hand upon his back. And then she spoke, breaking her personal vow to remain an observer. "If you wish to end your life here, I can offer you my hand." The man spun around to face her. There was neither anger nor surprise in his eyes, though. "Why would you say that?" "I do not know," she said. "Seeing you there on your knees, the words simply came out. I felt as though that was what you wanted." She lowered herself to her knees as well, so their eyes were at the same level. He flinched, but did not avert his gaze from hers. "You're right," he muttered, barely audible. "There was a time when I did want that. A long, long time ago. But still I descended those stairs. I couldn't let myself just toss aside what I had sacrificed everything to attain. Even knowing there was only suffering to be found at the bottom. That's exactly why. I had to own it. Just like I have to own my mistakes now." "I see. Then I shall observe and see where this path takes you." "What a wretched man," she thought, smiling. She was an experienced enough maid to know to keep that thought to herself, though. and she herself was also a wretched woman who had wanted to die alongside her love at the top of this very tower. But in her broken mind, those memories had been transformed into a fairy tale. The full moon had begun its descent by the time they left the cold chamber. At the collapsed section of stairs, Jacobo crossed first, as he had going up. The head maid then made to follow after him, but was instead greeted to his hand extended across the gap. She tilted her head. Obviously he was offering her assistance in crossing, but she had made it over with no difficulty the first time, so she couldn't understand why. Not to mention, the master of the house had no obligation to help a lowly maid. But bathed in the glow of the moon, her hand stretched out to take his, before she realized what happened. I do like that as well. Like, I'm thinking that she might unconsciously takes his hand because she unconsciously wants to be led out from her state of the cocoon, to be saved by Michelle, to like become herself again. But she needs someone to lead her, to help her. And by taking Jacobo's hand here, I'm thinking that it might be like her subconsciousness just trying to help her toward that, even though Jacobo is in no way capable of helping her, but it's still that want, that need, you know. They had both lost those they cared about most, and when their fingers touched, he saw a bright, spirited young woman with an infectious smile, and she saw a kind-hearted and sometimes sarcastic young man. Giselle and the slave, vestiges of their long-forgotten selves, bursting forth for the tiniest, most insignificant of moments. Michelle, to tell you the truth, I wanted nothing more than to descend these stairs with you, hand in hand. Morgana, to tell you the truth, I wanted nothing more than to go back to those days when I could still take your hand. By the time the head maid made it across the collapsed stairs, the shadows of the old cells had disappeared without a trace. Only the maid who always wore a smile and the forlorn businessman remained there in the tower. A faint connection had formed between them though, a shared isolation and emptiness. An empathy, a similarly damaged souls. But that too would fade in time. Their connection as fleeting as an autumn night. But him leading the way, and her following behind. They descended the spiral staircase together. And what about you? He asked. Were you able to find out something about yourself here? You want to make a bad joke now? It's terrible timing, Dodor, for that, I would say. Yes, she said. I believe I did. But I fear it would slip through my fingers again before long. You never struck me as the forgetful type. I have been for some time. I have no room for new memories anymore. Well, that's probably for the best, he said. It would be best if you forgot what you found here as well. Not a chance. My, she said. You are quite the intractable one. I could say the same about you. Say, Master. What is it? I want to tell you something, before I forget the things I felt tonight. She already took her hand. That is a bad joke, Dudor. Come on. Yeah? I was not terribly fond of you when we first met. Ha! That sounds about right. But that is not true any longer. Is that so? It is. The truth is, I thought you were creepy as hell at first. Didn't even want to look at you. That sounds about right. But that's not the case anymore. Is that so? Yeah, it is. And that was the end of that. I think that one was absolutely beautiful. I think of the stories we have had so far, this one was probably my favorite. Because I love Jacopo again, so a Jacopo-centered story, always good in my mind. But like, I love Giselle too, and to see those two characters like connect with each other and like share similar experiences, though in very different ways. And they like them both climbing the tower and like sort of reliving their memories. Just beautiful, and the writing was beautiful as always, so yeah, definitely love that one. But I'm looking at the time, we are going quite overtime right now. I need to go and do the adulting. So, only 2 stories today, but that means that we have plenty more. So it will be plenty more streams probably, or not plenty, but at least more than I was thinking, because I don't think that we will be able to finish all the rest next time. So probably at least 2, maybe even 3 more, depending on how long the rest of the stories are. But I am enjoying it so much. Like, it's like I said last time, I loved Reincarnation for what it was, but it's so nice to be back in like what basically is like the main game of the House in Fata Morgana, with the sadness, with the tragedies, and just let myself be engrossed in the writing. I enjoy it so much. It's just reminding me once again of the beauty of this story. I love it. I love it so much. Were the 2 pages of stories? Yeah, they were. We are only halfway down with the first page, so yeah. I think most of the others are shorter. Okay, well, so maybe at least 2 more streams then, I would say, probably. Without knowing for sure, because it is very hard to say, considering I am reading everything out loud and then we do talking, and so it will take the time it will take. It is still very nice and I'm enjoying myself, so like I said before, I'm in no rush to finish, so yeah. The stories are nice, yeah, I say so too. They are very nice, and like I said last time as well, it feels nice to kind of loop back to the core of the House in Fata Morgana as a finale to this whole journey that we have been through. So yeah, around 3 I would say. Yeah, I think so as well, considering how long this have taken us. Like, even if they are shorter, we might like squeeze in 3 per stream or something like that, maybe 4 if they are really short, but yeah, probably 2 or 3 I would say. So we have still some more House in Fata Morgana to enjoy. Yeah, what a character Jacopo is, definitely. I agree with that sentiment there. He is such an interesting character. There's so much to him, there's so many layers and so much to discover, and he is, once again, so human. He's so very complicated, and I just... chef's kiss to the writers. Like, they have done such a good job at writing an interesting villain in a way, but villain / anti-hero, I guess. Just amazing, really. You know, it's a good story when tiny hints and details make you feel all these things doesn't need to be in your face. Yeah, that's very true. Like, I love how it's not like explicitly telling us everything, that we can kind of like just make our own interpretations of the text with what we know of the story and the characters already. Like, it's so good. The writing is just amazing, and like, I can be honest, The House in Fata Morgana was my first ever visual novel, and it has spoiled me so much, because I am very picky with my visual novels now because of it, because I know what a good visual novel can do. So yeah, this is just amazing. It's so good. It's so good. The more I read, the harder it is for me to say what my favorite series and characters are, but Jacobo and Fata Morgana will always have a place in my heart. Tragic hero is what I would call Jacobo, yeah. Oh my god, my voice is giving out so much, my god. It's a good thing we are done. But yeah, I agree. I would say still that no story has topped The House in Fata Morgana for me. Like, I have one story that is very close second, and it is The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. Like, it's Chinese BL, for those of you who don't know. But I love that story so much as well, but for different reasons. But The House in Fata Morgana, it definitely have and always will have a very special place in my heart. Like, it's just so good in every way. Like, it's the writing, the music, and just the details and everything. Like, I'm thinking, I mean, this is way early because we are only about to finish it, but I can definitely see myself doing the House in Fata Morgana streams again, like, in a while, because I love it so much. And I do know that if you like read it again, that there is kind of New Game Plus with like different details to the story, so that would be interesting to do on stream as well. It will take a while though, because I think after this we will do a lot of other things, because I have a lot of streaming plans, but just because I love this story so much, I can definitely see myself returning to it on stream even, and not only reading it to myself, because it's just so good, honestly. Visual novels are like as much as Fata for me are White Album 2, oh god, I'm gonna butcher that name, Subahibi and Utavare Umono. Okay, might be something I have to check out then, because I'm always up for finding new stuff. White Album 2 is my favorite VN. Okay, yeah, I might have to check it out. Malasan is my favorite series of all time and book series. Oh yeah, I have heard about it. Although I do feel like I am a bit daunted by it. I have been like intrigued to try it, but it's like, isn't it like very long and like kind of complicated from what I have heard. So I am intrigued. I kind of want to try it someday, but don't know when. Like the one very big and daunting series I am right now trying to get myself into, like, it will be a while, but it will, if I'm kind of like in a reading slump right now, so I'm very, very picky with what I'm reading right now. But I have promised my friend and mod here in chat, Fia, that I will read Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. I did start that. I have not finished it. Like, I need to reread because I have forgotten basically everything. But if I'm going to like read a big and daunting series, it will be that one that will take priority. But I am intrigued by Malasan. I've heard a lot of good things, definitely. And yeah, Dodo, thank you, the vote. Before I go, which I feel like I need to do because I'm hungry and I need to shower and my voice is definitely giving out any second. But for those of you who are interested, I do have a poll up on the community tab, and this is the last week that we're having it because I'm finishing Crisis Core on Thursday, it's the plan. And I have a poll up for which Final Fantasy game we will be playing after that. So if you're interested in voting, now's the chance, because after Thursday it is going to be decided. So go and do that. Yeah, Stormlight Archive 5 will come soon. That is true. So I feel like I should get to it and read the books, but as I said, I'm kind of in a reading slump, so reading something that big and kind of complicated, not now. But I have something to look forward to, at least. They are in my bookshelf. I think I have at least... I think I have all the 4 books that are out. Yeah, I do. So, yeah. I am looking forward to it, but I need to get myself out of the slump. So currently I am reading Heaven Official's Blessing, which is a another BL of the same author that wrote Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, and it's quite fun. So yeah. New chapter should have been released. Yeah, I follow Brandon Sanderson on Instagram, so I get to see when all the new stuff is happening. I usually read the short stories when I'm in a slump, like Ken Leo Paper Menagerie short story collection. Yeah, I tend to like read stuff that feel, easily read and like not too heavy. Heaven Official's Blessing is kind of perfect for that because it is very like fun and goes. I'm reading it very slowly, but when I'm reading it, it goes by quickly, if that makes sense, because it's quite. It's a quite fun story. Like, it seems like it doesn't really take itself too seriously, which I enjoy. So that is good. And also I have just recently started on the side as well, Demon in the Wood, which is like the Darkling story from Shadow and Bone, which is quite interesting as well. And like I said, that's a graphic novel, so that one's also very easily digested, which is nice. Strong and Dark was good as audio too, if you want to do that thing where you do a bit of both. Yeah, I might probably do that when I get to Stormlight Archive, just because it's so big and daunting, so it's good to like be able to listen to it on the bus when I'm going to work. So yeah, I probably will like both listen and read it once I get to it. Reading Wandering In at the moment, and like 6 million words in. Oh god, that sounds daunting. Still only halfway. Oh my. Yeah, that doesn't sound like my type of book right now. I definitely need something more easily digested. Although Heaven Official's Blessing is quite daunting as well, because, technically it is one book, but they have split it up into 8 books. So if I'm looking at it like one book, then it's huge. It's huge. But like, it's like over 1,000 pages then. But since it is split up, it goes by easier, and I do read other books in between, so that makes it a bit easier for me. So yeah. Anyway, I need to go now because my voice is trying to murder me. So thank you so much for being with me here today, guys. It's been lovely as always, and I hope you guys have had fun as well. Do vote if you want to. Like I said, this week is the last chance before the decision will be made. And also the next stream will be on Thursday, and we will be playing Crisis Core. And also, I will mention on Sunday, I'm starting my writing marathon for November. So that one I'm very much looking forward to as well. So be excited, guys, because I am. Yeah, have a nice evening, everyone, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!